halftime show, they couldn't like dig up the field, right? So they had people literally be trees. And so for all the people in theater who were like
Uh-huh.
trees in instead of getting like a role, it was like a big win for those people who were like just the trees in their school play. It's like, yes, they were actually
Mm.
important. Okay, so we're officially, let's see if we're live on YouTube. Give me one sec. Oh, I don't think we are live. Oh, okay, we're officially live on YouTube.
Awesome.
So good. Now we're almost live on Facebook. I'm gonna
Okay.
give it. I'm actually just gonna start the stream on Facebook because might as well. Okay, we're gonna go live. And then we'll kind of just like wait a little bit for people to join.
Okay.
But I think this time we've actually had fewer tech problems. This is the first time we haven't had a tech issue.
Nice. Except, can you hear like echoing from my computer when you're
No, I
like,
can't.
okay,
So it's good.
cool.
Do you hear echo on your end?
I do, but as long as it's not coming through.
Oh, if you hear echo, you might want to put on headphones. Is all. Okay.
Hmm.
Let's see here. I'm gonna just quickly tag everyone on Facebook. Hey, we got one viewer on Facebook. Heck yeah! If you're here, just say hello in the chat. Let's just tag everyone. Give me 1 second. Tag everyone. Oh, what? Here we go. Join us today for. Join us in our discussion today about conference. Hey, Jasmine, and hey, Jess is live. Jess is
Nice.
saying hello in the comments. Jess is at her mom's house right now, and I guess she's watching us, so no pressure. Okay, so we're officially live on in Latter Day Lobsters, and
Cool.
then let's look at YouTube, make sure we're live there again. I think we are. Awesome, stubbling stones to cornerstones. YouTube is working, confirmed. Heck yeah! All right, I
Oh,
think we're just gonna get started. Now that we're rolling live. So, okay, so for those of you who are watching, you're probably seeing a new face. Let me introduce everyone. This is Megan Bessendorfer. She is my cousin who I love dearly. She runs a channel called Let Your Heart Be Glad, and her channel is all about General Conference talk. So if you subscribe to her channel, you'll see just like her breakdown of just different conference talks that she likes. And you've been doing this for what, about a year and a half
yeah.
now?
Yeah, it's gone by really fast, but yeah, a year.
Awesome. Yeah. So I thought, okay, general conferences today is Megan would be the perfect person to have on the show because you are up to date with everything conference related. So awesome. So let's just jump right into it. I want to get your impression. What did you think of conference this year?
Yeah. So this last 6 months going through all of the conference, I felt like the talks were like super focused on repentance, on Christ's atoning sacrifice. And so it was really neat that this time around we had conference land on Easter weekend. I loved being able to hear just so many talks that for me, what I heard the most was this positive messaging about changing for the right reasons, changing for Jesus Christ and the way that that can bless our lives. And really just this messaging that we all have a past, we all have mistakes that we've made, and that was expected. That was the reason why Christ atoned for us. And so, not to let those mistakes and whatever colored past we might have that maybe causes us to pause and not feel sure of ourselves when it comes to our relationship with Christ, and instead to realize that's the whole point, is for us to lean on him and to come unto him and to be confident as we do that. So I thought it was beautiful messages that they gave.
It was beautiful. By the way, I forgot to mention, since Jasmine is in the chat, you and Jasmine should meet. I think you two would get along really well.
Okay,
Um,
so actually I met Jasmine. She probably
oh,
doesn't
really?
remember me at that conference.
At
The
fair?
Yeah, at fair.
Oh,
I
no
went and
way.
I met her, but it was so brief. It was like in the hors d'oeuvres
No, no,
line.
not no, Jasmine, Jasmine Height.
Oh no, I haven't met her.
Okay, yeah, we gotta get you two connected. You
That
guys
would
are
be
would get
awesome. I would love
yeah.
that.
Yeah, I remember you telling me about meeting the other Jasmine. She's cool too.
Yeah.
No shade
Yeah, cool.
on the Jasmines out there.
So
But
tell me about this Jasmine. How do you know her?
I met Jasmine. Jess and I met Jasmine through Don Bradley.
Okay.
And then and then also her mom and my mom went to high school together in Benemerito in
Get
Mexico.
out. Oh, that's
Yeah, I know,
crazy.
right? Such a small world. And then we
Mhm,
just kind of like love this space. So
mhm.
okay, so I uh I I went to conference for Saturday morning session. So that's the session I remember the most.
Yeah.
And it's been a while, especially after COVID. It's been a long time since I've gone to conference. I can't even remember the last time I went to conference. But it was probably with some friends or with family.
Mhm,
And this year, it's kind of special because they finally took all the most of the scaffolding down from the temple, and like they're
mhm.
starting to clean up all the rubble from the renovations. And of course, I went with family this year, and I was expecting like more protesters.
Yeah.
Um, but when I got there, I noticed something different about the protesters. I noticed that they were dressed very nicely. They were wearing like sweaters and ties,
Mhm.
and I'm like, oh, these people look like Mormons. Like they
Us.
look,
Yeah, they look like us. I
yeah,
had
and I'm
that
like,
same
oh, I see what
thought.
they're doing. They're like being kind of sneaky. They kind of, and because in most years they kind of look homeless, and they have like cardboard signs, and I'm like,
Yeah, that I was kinda disappointed. It was like they didn't bring their A game this time. They were just like, yeah, they were sneakier, but I liked it when they were loud and crazy. They made it more like, "Yeah, I'm going to conference, like, I don't care about the
yeah, you kind of
protesters." This
felt,
time it was like, "Oh, no big deal."
yeah, they were really like reverent too. I was surprised. I was like, maybe because it was in the morning. I don't know,
Hmm.
but then I got to
Maybe they're trying to be more
conference.
respectful.
Maybe, yeah, or
Maybe.
they're, well, I feel like too, it's also there's so many members who are generally like, like pretty respectful, and so it's hard to be like a clown i-
Right.
around everyone else. So just our example is enough to help people. Like it makes it harder for them to be like crazy.
Well, totally. Because even just as we were walking in, because I went to the Sunday afternoon session of conference, just barely,
Mhm.
um, and yeah, a lot of people as we walked past the protesters, like, "Have a good day," "Happy Easter," and they're just being so kind to them as they're walking past that yeah, I can imagine on the other end of that, it gets to the point of like, "Wait, what are we, doing?" Just, like, heckling them, but yeah, they didn't really say much.
Totally. And so that was a real surprise. And then once I got there, I was taking notes. And I was really sort of anticipating like it to be a big deal because it's President Oaks' first general conference as the confirmed president
Mhm,
of the church. We did the solemn assembly. And I
mhm,
remember I was telling Jess, I remember I we the last time not the last time, but when President Monson, I think, became president of the church
mhm,
after President Hinckley died, I was pretty young and I didn't know what was going on, but I remember sitting in my living room with my family and my dad being like, "Hey, hey, stand up! It's your turn to stand up," because I think I was an Aaronic priesthood holder at the time, and so
mhm.
I remember like the significance of that moment was impressed upon me as a teenager, having to stand for the solemn assembly, even though I wasn't physically present. So I thought that was really cool. And then to do that again in the conference center with President
Mhm.
Oaks there was really cool.
Yeah, how was that when you were just there then seeing, like, the thousands of people stand at their different
It
turns? Was
was
that pretty cool?
it was interesting. Like again, it had been a while since I've attended general conference there, and I noticed a few things. Like one, the conference center is super huge, and
Mhm,
there's thousands of people there. But then also like I was reminded that the conference center, as magnificent as it is, like the whole conference is actually sort of like set up for broadcasting. And so
mhm,
like it's for television and for satellite communication because the majority of the members watching it, the millions of members watching it are watching it from home or
home.
on YouTube,
Mhm,
or back in the day you'd go to the chapel
mhm,
and they'd stream it there, right? And
mhm,
so it was cool to be there, but then it was also interesting to see the camera crews and like how they panned the shots. It was kind of like, I think it's actually really cool that like it was more for the people watching at home.
yeah, it
Um,
was very almost behind the scenes feeling. A
yeah,
very
exactly.
beautiful behind the scenes because 'cause you're in these beautiful chairs in this beautiful conference center, but, yeah, I loved watching, like, the camera guys as they're trying to get the right angle for the choir or whatever, and then you could, like, see it you knew when it was that cameraman's turn because then on the big screen, it would have his shot, and you're like, "Oh, yeah, that's the guy getting that shot." So I totally get what you're saying, where it's like this magnificent behind the scenes
Yeah.
experience to go to conference, yeah.
And I think it's cool because, really, like, the thing about a live event is that you're sort of privileged to be there live, and the
Mhm,
people who aren't there live, they kinda miss out, but then I kinda felt almost like not that it was flipped, but it was kinda, like, equalized where the people watching at home, like, they got a really good production,
mhm,
and the people there also are I mean, they're just lucky to be there, and so it was really cool.
yeah,
Um, so it but to see the solemn assembly with, like, thousands of people there and, like, all the people sitting in the row and my family and, like, everyone there, like, that was a pretty special occasion. Also, the feeling you get when, when it's tradition where President Oaks walks in and everyone rises to their
mhm,
feet, and it's like, "Oh, okay," and there's, like, that reverence that you feel, was really cool, and, see, I think in the church, in general, like, it's one thing to talk about what was said at conference, but then it's another thing to talk about, like, how you experience conference.
mhm,
And so, for example, there was one year, I think it was last year, where Sophie, my wife, and I, we were all sick. We were, like, dying, it felt like.
mhm,
But then the choir was so beautiful that it was soothing, and so it was like we didn't get much out of it in terms of we remembered what they said, but in terms of, like,
right,
having a very peaceful, soothing experience, like, that was
mhm,
more impactful to me than what was actually said, and I think, like, paying attention to how we experience conference is really, like is just as important as what people are saying, and
mhm,
so I can't be more grateful that for, like, the effort and the time to coordinate, like, such a huge global event.
mhm,
Um, so yeah, I thought it was fantastic this year. It's been fantastic in the past, and it was cool to be there, like, kinda like you said, it's kinda like behind the scenes,
mhm,
being part of the experience, and I was surprised too that, so we did the solemn assembly, and then no one, there in the past there have been efforts to coordinate like an opposition to say I
yeah.
oppose during the sustaining of the general officers, but no one did that this year, um, which I was really happy about. So yeah, it was really cool to see all that happening, just all in kind of in person. It was really cool.
Yeah, I actually did an episode on my channel about what happens behind the scenes for General Conference, and I can't remember the exact hours off the top of my head, but I think it was something like 93,000 hours between all of the people that have to coordinate everything for conference, and it's crazy because it's, like, down to the minute, and what I something that I said in that episode that I've reflected on multiple times is just how it has to be so precise, and yet the Lord can use a 10-minute talk or a 12-minute talk or a 15-minute talk, whatever, and He can make it something impactful. He can inspire that individual for the time that they are allotted and give us these messages that are so remarkable and can be life-changing if we take the time to study them and apply them to our lives, and one of the things that I love from an experience I had in conference when I was 18, I got to sing in a choir
Oh yeah, I
in
remember.
conference. Yeah,
I remember. I
and
remember
so
seeing you on TV. I was like, "That's Megan.
I
She's
know,
there."
it's yeah, and what's so
I think I
crazy
still
is
have, like, a screenshot of that, actually.
yeah, well, I totally do. What's so funny is because my husband was on his mission at that time, and we met
Mhm,
before our missions, and then we, like, wrote to each other, and
mhm.
so when I was singing in conference, he was watching conference in the Netherlands.
Oh, that's
And
cool.
then all of a sudden, there was, like, this pan of my face, like, it was like a close-up of my
Yeah,
face,
I remember.
which is, like, terrifying, and of course, I had no idea that it was happening at the time, but he, like,
Mhm.
turned to his companion, he's like, "Oh my gosh, that's my girlfriend," and he's like, "That is not your girlfriend." He's like, "Yes, it is, I swear it is," and it totally was, it was me.
That's
So,
so
anyway,
funny.
but what I was gonna say is what was cool is from the choir seats, you can kind of see, like, I don't know, like, this little guy, and you can't even see him from the audience. I was looking, but if I remember right, he was, like, in this booth, and you could see, like, this big countdown clock,
Mhm.
and so it's kinda cool because then at the end of conference, like, if they are running behind or something, then they can kind of like, "Hey, we need, like, the closing prayer to be a little faster," or, "We need," a little shorter, or just whatever, but, yeah, I just remember thinking at that time when I was 18, just thinking, "Wow, this is so amazingly organized and yeah, just and I agree with you that the feeling we get from conference sometimes is the more impactful thing than the actual words spoken, and that's the whole point of the Spirit of the Lord, right? Is to bring
Mhm.
what we need in that moment, like with you guys and Sophie when you guys were sick. It's just like that peace. Or I know that for me, before I started my channel, it was this feeling of I want to participate in the gathering of Israel and I want to do something. And so
Totally.
I'm gonna figure it out. And so yeah, I agree. Just being there and today being there with my husband and my brother and my soon to be sister-in-law, and just even though the prophet was still this big, we were far away enough. I'm like, he's bigger on the big screen at my house. But
Yeah,
it was just
exactly.
so cool because we got to be there and just to know I'm in the same space. Like the prophet of the Lord is right there and we get to see them and see them walk in and the brotherly love that they have and different things. My husband leaned over because there's that section where all of their wives sit, and he's like, "Do you think that they like know each other super well, the wives?" I'm like, "I hope so because they need it." Like if no one else in the world understands what they go through as wives to the general authorities than each other. And
That
so
would be
I
tough.
just thought, I hope that they are best friends. I hope that that's kind of like you know, a super special society right there that they get to have that no one else would understand. So anyway, just some thoughts on what you
Cool.
were saying.
So, okay, so I want to dive right into probably the most controversial part of the conference.
Okay.
Um, I think Elder Becerra, his talk on tithing was, I mean, as I was listening to it, I was like, oh, I'm sure someone will have a beef with this. He shared a story about how he was running a business and his business was basically in the red,
Mm,
and he couldn't like keep up with his payments, and so and he hadn't kept up with his tithing either, and so he spoke to his local leaders and they just like gave him a pep talk, and he was very explicit to say that they didn't tell him to sell anything, but he felt impressed to like sell basically like everything,
mm,
um, to pay off his debts and then to pay his tithing, and he ended up selling his company vehicle, at such a price that he could like keep afloat for a bit longer and then pay tithing.
mhm,
I remember hearing that, and first of all, like I mean, being like Latino and coming from like a family that has very close ties to Mexico and being in Mexico, and like the Latin kind of fervor of faith that is like
mhm,
it's just different than the American church, right?
mhm,
But like for me hearing that, I'm like, yeah, this is like the type of talk we would like to hear. But then I feel like the North American saints and North American critics are like, ooh, like should we be sharing that kind of story where we tell people to sell off like their possessions to so that they can pay the church? It sounds kind of exploitative.
mm,
Um, but I mean, um, again, like to me, like living in LA and in Utah and like coming from like kind of humble means, like those types of stories really kind of like I relate to them because it's
mhm,
like, yeah, like for our parents growing up, it was like tight, and paying tithing is like a decision you have to make where it's like not an easy decision. It's very easy to not do it. And then on top of that, like if you're running a business, it's not like and for anyone who's ran a business, like it's not that you clock out at 5 p.m. Like you're
right,
ongoing resolving issues with your business and trying to keep it like profitable. And so the stress of like being poor and the stress of trying to run a business and keeping it afloat, like it's heavy. And then to make that like it is, I think, an act of faith, like in the face of one that's not, and it's also an act of faith that's informed about poverty, right? And so I see
right,
people who I think are removed from that kind of poverty, kind of like up, saying, hey, I don't think that's correct what Elder Becerra said. But I'm like, no, 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 this is the type of faith that these people bring to the table, and like
right,
their cultural experience of like, yeah, like it's not that selling your car to keep your business afloat and pay your tithing, it's hard. It's that every day is like that. Every day you're making a
right.
decision like that where you're trying to keep things together. So I thought it was very, like Jess and I were even talking about it, like how just like how impactful that talk was. And we're like, yeah, like we,
Yeah.
when we're talking about it still.
Well, and
Um,
I think for me, my takeaway would be he in his heart, he wanted to keep one of God's commandments, one of God's laws, right? Which was to pay his tithing. And so he went to the Lord to figure out how to do that. And selling his car, like doing these other things, that was his answer. And he received the blessing he was looking for. So to me, I kind of think if the Lord was okay with it and how it went down, I'm okay with it. Like the Lord wouldn't have blessed him going down that road to be able to have the results that he did if it was, like, wrong. I don't know, like, he sought it out and he did what he felt was right, and I think it's more just the spirit of keeping the law, and that's how he went about it, and, um, yeah, I think that I can see what you're saying, that it could be kind of quick to people could be quick to judge that situation and take it too far and say, "Oh, well, he's preaching, let's sell all of our things." And I don't think that that's what he was preaching. Like you said, he was clear that that wasn't the, direction that he was given, but that was the solution that he found. So,
yeah,
yeah, I
and
think I
even
think if go sorry, go ahead.
oh, no, I was gonna say, even from a business perspective, like, if your business is in the red, literally the best thing you can do is to sell off your liabilities
Mm,
and keep your business afloat. Like, that's perfect business sense. But I think people are well, not too many people are business owners, and not too many people like understand the situation. So we don't know the whole story behind his financial decisions. All we know
right.
is that one, he's okay, and two, like he felt that that was the best thing for him and his family and for his relationship with God. So I feel like you can't really judge him. Like, and I would even go so far as to say we know things turned out okay because he's literally speaking in conference right now.
That's what I was just thinking too, and it really is one of those stories that he's sharing something personal, and he's hoping that we will, respect and I guess just kind of, like, have some I don't know, dignity when we're integrity when we're talking about his story of not to tear it apart, not to make it something that it's not. He's sharing a personal moment from his life, and that takes vulnerability and trust of the people who are going to be receiving the message and hoping that they'll receive it in the right spirit. And who are we to judge the answers that he received from the Lord? You know, I mean, we're all walking our different path, and we are the expert of of our own lives, you know, us and Christ when we're partnered, and it really wouldn't be appropriate for anyone to comment on the revelation that he received because they weren't there. They don't know what how that went down between him and the Lord. So, I think that for me, it was just how I received it, how I took it when he told the story was, like you said, the beautiful faith that, just I served my mission in Mexico. You know, you and I share similar heritage. Anyway, and it's beautiful. The type of faith that people have. It's just I actually I was just remembering this as you were talking, and I took a class, an institute class this last semester from Reina Aburto, and she's not from Mexico, and now I can't even think where she's
That's
from, and I
cool.
knew it. Anyway,
Isn't
but it
she
was
from
just so
Honduras?
yes, I think so. I was gonna say Ecuador, but that's wrong. I
I
think it
think it's
is
right
maybe
from
Honduras.
Honduras, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, but the class is taught in Spanish, and so the class is filled with students that are attending UVU or BYU or just wanting to attend institute, and, they're from all over the Spanish-speaking world, just, like, everywhere, and it was so neat because their stories of faith and the way that they, testify of the Savior is so intimate. It's just like, "I will do anything for the Lord," and I think that anyone with that attitude is gonna be okay, and that all of us could benefit from adopting more of that type of conviction, like, "I will do anything for the Lord," which goes back to what I was saying of conference this weekend to me just seemed about change, being willing to change for Christ and trusting that he knows what he's asking of us, and he knows the benefits that the certain changes, whatever it is personally that we need to do, how they benefit our lives and bless us in the long run, so he's the master of our salvation, so I just wouldn't question it, and I would definitely say that we can learn from different cultures and backgrounds, and kind of if we're humble, then we can take in what maybe we're missing that someone else is living by. You know, this willingness, like I'm willing to give up everything and say, "Am I willing to do that?" You know? So,
Totally. Well, I was thinking about as you were speaking about all this and having such faith and things like that, it brings me to kind of like the next controversial point, which I thought of, and that was Elder Bednar's talk. Um, Elder Bednar's talk about endurance and charity. Now,
Mhm.
I will say for most members of the church, I don't think it was very controversial, and I don't think
Yeah, I'm
anyone
gonna
will
go to my
hear.
notes to remind me what it was about.
Yeah,
Let's see.
yeah, go to your notes. I took a lot of notes when he was speaking
Okay, yeah.
because it really like for me it rang off a lot of bells. But um, Elder Bednar's talk was about charity and endurance, and he kind of like made this case that first he kind of like says, "Hey, enduring to the end isn't this like grit your teeth and like clench your fists and kind of just like suffer the long road right to the end."
Right. Mhm.
But he tied it to more like an overflowing of grace and abundance and love and charity. And I think and look to me that this is me putting on like my philosophy hat. Um, I think when I think about criticisms of the church and of Christianity, the biggest critic ever was Nietzsche in the 1800s, in the late 1800s, and he was like the most like the most brutal critic of Christianity. And
Mm,
one of the things that he argued was that he felt that Christianity was a religion that valued pity and weakness and
mm,
resentment, and people kind of just did things because they felt bad for people. And he felt that that like even the Christian God was someone who demanded repayment and retribution and vengeance. Um, and as he's making this critique, he says, yeah, I prefer a worldview where you're strong and you're full of grace and abundance. And he would even say um, that the very concept of grace is that you're so resourceful that when people incur a debt to you, you're able to forgive them because you have so much to give.
hmm,
And that's a very like, and so he what he does is he sort of flips it around. He says Christianity is like the opposite of good. And he's a critic, right? But his solution to the problem was maybe we shouldn't be part of this weak religion. Maybe we should be strong and be abundant. And if we and the reason why we forgive or anything isn't because we pity people. It's because we're so full of abundance that we have the resources to forgive.
right.
And I thought that was interesting. But that's what I heard echoed in Elder Bednar's talk, where he says, "Hey, you know, love and charity, like if you think about the word charity, it means giving up freely what you have in abundance, when you're being charitable. If you give
Mhm.
someone alms on the street, um, it's because you have enough to give. Um, and I think what he's saying really is like you're not just surviving this mortal probation, you should be thriving in this mortal probation. And
Mhm.
I think that really flips the script on kind of our understanding of what it means um, to endure to the end. It's not about like just being subjected to life. It's like maybe you should live a life so aligned with Christ that it's not just. I think initially it is a sacrifice to follow Christ, but
Absolutely.
but I think the blessings follow, and the sting of sacrifice and the sting of death is no longer, and you're full of
Mhm.
grace. And so sharing your testimony isn't a sacrifice anymore. It's like you're just so full of. I think again, my favorite metaphor is the one in the tree of life where Lehi eats of the tree and then he has to share it. Now I'm like a foodie, right? You can tell
Right.
just by like how much is in my teeth. But like, I'm the kind of person that's like, hey, if I make a great meal, I want to share it with someone else. Or if
Mhm.
I find a nice taco stand, I'm gonna
Right.
tell my friends about it. And it's like that. I think that kind of puts the experience back into the tree of life. It's like if you've ever eaten something that was so good, you want to like make
Mhm.
sure your husband has it and your friend. You're like, hey, we're going here next week because you gotta have to try this chicken parmesan or whatever. Um, and so, like, I think that's really like the gospel message where it's so sweet and it's so delicious and it's so amazing and full of abundance that I have to share it with others. And
Mhm.
it's not so much like, oh, where I'm just like destitute and I'm surviving. I
Mhm.
think though that, I mean, there's a place for that metaphor. Like truly, the the act of repenting and converting, where you have to really give up your old habits and give up your old way of life. I think that is hard. It's like a sacrifice.
Yeah.
But then afterwards, it's like it's so worth it that you want to share it with others, And
Yeah, I
so
think I remember on one of your episodes, I can't remember who you had on with you, but you said something about how living the gospel, like, you have to find meaning in it, right? And, like, without that meaning, without the purpose, then it is a lot more challenging, it just is, and I think, oh man, just being a disciple of Christ, if anyone is still under the misconception that it means your life will be easy, like, you haven't been paying attention, right? Because that's not how it works. I don't know a single example of anyone at all in any point in history that has followed Jesus Christ that hasn't also endured trials. That's part of the refiner's fire. Um, so yeah, I think that just finding that meaning in our devotion to God, because you're right. I definitely have felt in my life that in the moments when I have really chosen to take those steps to sacrifice for Christ and to really give my life, give, my opinions, give my heartache, give my hurt, whatever it was over to Christ, it did feel like a sacrifice at first because I had to learn to trust him with all those things. I had to learn that, okay, I'm going to give these to you and I'm trusting that in return you're going to have my back, and if we go through hard things that it'll be okay. And um one I don't know, are we allowed to share tiny things from our patriarchal blessings, cuz I feel
I
like
mean,
it
that's
super
up to you.
applies.
I won't tell you one way or
I
another.
Well, this isn't like
Mm.
it's not like earth shattering or anything, but there's this part in my patriarchal blessing that says that as I endure trials in my life, that God will lead me as I put my trust in him, and it says some other stuff, but the gist of it is that he will lead me safely through all difficulties. And that's something that I've clung to in my life, and it's meant more to me in different moments. So, yeah, just knowing that that promise is there, like, that's the whole reason that he came, was so that he could rescue us. And something that I really love in conference is that I heard over and over again that the messaging about repentance or coming unto Christ was a message of healing. And they shared a lot of times the scripture, like, "Come unto me that I may heal you." And that's one of my favorite, those verses. I think there's one specifically in First Nephi that I'm thinking of. Um, Anyway, where it talks about that, just come unto me that I may heal you, be converted. And I love that because to me, what I have come to learn as I've studied these conference messages this last year, like super in depth, and then had to do the work to like put it together for an episode, and then just the personal study that I do, really what has hit home for me is that when I come into Christ, it's an invitation that he's going to heal me from the inside out. And then, like you said, I can have that overabundance, and it's growing. I'm not there yet, like little by little, but have that abundance of charity and that willingness to realize, okay, God's working on me, God's working on you, he's working on everyone, and I can be patient with others as the Lord is being patient with me and as others are being patient with me, because I haven't arrived yet. I've got a lot of growth that I still need to do. So seeing myself that way, where it's this process of learning how to become who the Lord wants me to be and trusting that that's someone I want to be as well, has really then helped me to, I think, see others more on that level of we really are all children of God. He really does love us all equally.
Oh, that's beautiful. I think that's fantastic. Um, I'm trying to think of what else happened in conference today. I so we left the morning session. We drove back
Mhm.
home. We had more family come into town. And then this morning we made breakfast, and I like burned all the pancakes today.
Oh, no. You're only
Um,
supposed to burn the first one.
I know the first one's for the dog, but
Yeah.
all of them were for the dog this time. Um, so what other highlights were there for you for your conference?
I loved that there seemed to be a lot of people. The ones that I wrote down was Elder Kieran, Elder Wu, and Elder Ortega, and they were converts to the church. And I thought that there are a lot more stories over the pulpit now during conference, from people who have, um, converted. And there were before. I don't know why this time, now that I'm saying that, I'm like, well, I can think of many last time too. But I really like those stories of how they came to understand that the gospel could fit into their lives and that they could fit into the gospel. And I think that they shared it really beautifully. That was one of the things I highlighted. I'm just kind of scrolling through my notes here.
Okay, Elder Kieran, he's from England and they have a certain kind of humor there.
Yeah.
And in America, we're like really sensitive.
Yeah.
Um, and almost like bros making midget jokes like at conference. And I was like,
Yeah.
nah, nah. Like I know Elder. I mean, oh, I don't know if you know this, but Elder Kieran's daughter was in my class at BYU. She
Oh,
she
cool. No,
graduated
I
with
didn't
me,
know that.
and he was there. It was kind of fun. She's really nice, by the way. But I mean, Elder Kieran is pretty nice too. So I'm like, I know he's not making like
Right.
bad jokes at people's expense. It's just a funny pun. It really is what he was doing.
Yeah.
Um, okay, Jessica's commenting in the chat. Hold on, we gotta address this.
Oh, cool.
Jessica
Yeah.
says that's not true. This time you didn't burn the first. Okay. Actually, that's true. It was flipped. The first pancake came out perfect, and then all
And
the other
then,
ones came out so bad. I felt so bad.
oh, you let the comal get too hot.
Yeah, I think so.
That's funny.
And then Katrina says it's kind of like BBQ theory. Got to sacrifice a hot dog to the grill gods. Yes, that's true. The first hot dog is always like has the lighter fluid taste.
Right. You guys are hilarious.
um, Corey Bell says Christ is risen. Christ is risen. It's Easter. I'm so glad. I'm glad conference fell on Easter. Today we not yeah we kind of like had Easter dinner plans. But this is what we had planned. We had to like change our plans. But if when Christ was born, not when he was born, when he was resurrected, he ate fish and honeycomb with his disciples and the
Mhm.
apostles. And so I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna make salmon. And then Rockwell ice cream has honeycomb ice cream.
Oh,
So I was
that's
like,
cute.
yes, salmon and honeycomb ice cream is perfect Easter dinner. But
That's
we ended up going to my mom's and she made carne asada, which is
which is
still pretty
good.
good. Yeah,
Yeah,
like
that's good.
yeah.
Carne asada is good food. You don't pass that up.
Yeah, exactly. So
That's
we're gonna have
awesome.
ice cream later. But Michael says, let's see. Michael says, oh, I kind of well, I'll come back to this comment later. He says, yes, as a North American's perspective, I wish the Chiefs would teach the canon 1/10 of increase, not income. Okay, that's yeah. There's
Mhm.
always a debate about. Okay, here's my take on tithing. Okay, um,
Let's hear it.
I in the DNC it says like a tenth of your increase.
Mhm.
Some people there's if you go to work in Utah you'll run into a debate with your coworkers. It's like, do you pay 10% on gross or on net,
On net,
right?
right.
And
Mhm.
then someone's like, well, I pay on gross, so I'm like more righteous or some stupid thing. But I honestly like I I think it's truly like between you and the Lord. And we no one like it's an honor system and God knows your heart.
Mhm.
But I've been in situations where, I've been to temple ceilings and there are certain people there that I know haven't paid tithing. And
Mhm.
like the bishop was gracious and like, let them be there. And that's awesome. And I think and there's this, I don't know, there's this weird narrative. I mean, there everything happens in the church, but I think really it's between you and God. And so like you have to just be sincere and like you give what you give and you should do it out of the goodness of your heart and sincerity. But I don't think we are in a place to judge others or to even make the claim that the church is like penny pinching and like monitoring your expenses. Like it's not happening. But
Mhm.
I know some people they have some fancy work like tithing arrangement. I'm not here to analyze that, but I
Mhm.
think if you are like sincere in like what you give to God, I think God will accept it.
I do, yeah.
So
I absolutely agree with you, and the bottom line is that someone paying on gross or net or whatever, um, they could have you could have 2 individuals, one paying on gross, one paying net, and they have equal conviction to the Lord, and the Lord knows that. And we might not because we're, like, judging, through our own lens, but I think that, just to your point, God knows their heart, and, um I think if we are keeping the commandments to the best that we know how, and that's what we're striving for, and, when we slip and mess up, that we reevaluate, whatever. I mean, I feel like that's just all part of the process of being sanctified. I really don't think that, like you said, the Lord's not it's the tithing, the law of tithing has never been about money. It's about our heart. And so I think, yes, it is a monetary thing that we are giving, but before, it was food, it was crops, it was animals, it was, stuff like
Mhm.
that. So I just feel like
Well,
but
I
like
think too,
go ahead.
like, if you're talking about, like, the law of consecration,
Yeah.
I mean, that really worked out in the church's favor, especially into the late 19th century when, the US government was at odds with the saints in Utah and polygamy and Brigham Young.
Mhm.
And into the early 20th century, the church was disenfranchised and the church was trying to seize property from the saints. But because they had consecrated it to the church and to like the corporation of the church, in legal, you know, within the legal system, the government was not able to confiscate their assets because it didn't
Right.
belong to them; it belonged to the church. And so it's interesting to see, like, again, from a very materialistic North American, like, enlightenment, like Western enlightenment perspective, it seems harsh to give up any of your hard-earned money to any entity. And then taxes, of course, I think are like pretty much immoral and like they bomb children with those. um
Mhm.
but but with tithing, even tithing is hard, but it's interesting to see how consecrating like everything ended up saving the members, in that legal battle between the U.S. government and the members. So
Mhm.
there's something going on there that I think is valuable. I think doing if you're I mean, and my favorite line in the one of my favorite lines in the in the New Testament in the Sermon on the Mount, is, seek ye the kingdom of God and all these things shall be added unto you. And that's a promise.
Mhm.
It's not, it's this promise that if you put God first, like things will work themselves out. And like
Mhm.
really you're putting your life in order when you put God first. When you put God first, I mean the promise hit me today as I was reviewing my notes and reading the Sermon on the Mount,
Mhm.
um if you put God first, everything else that you are seeking, that you are in need of, like it'll come to you, and you have to trust God, and that's hard,
Mhm.
man. But you know, but if you
Yeah.
do it, that's what you're promised. It doesn't promise you'll be rich. It'll promise that you'll have what you need. So,
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. I think that you're spot on with that.
okay, sorry. So we kind of got sidetracked. What
It's
other
fine.
highlights did you have in mind from your notes?
Well, you brought up Easter and how it landed on Easter again, and, I think that I was just reflecting a lot on, 2 things that I noticed is obviously with Easter, we focused on the Easter message and Christ's resurrection, but also in conference, there were a lot of talks about, families who had lost infants. And that particularly stood out to me because my first pregnancy that I had, was I ended up miscarrying the baby at 17 weeks, and I delivered her, and we have her, um, buried in a cemetery here close to our home, and I remember at that time, whatever that was, 10 years ago, just wanting answers and going to, the church's website, going to the scriptures and, um trying to really understand, like, what does that mean? What happens to this child that I miscarried? Like, how is that gonna work in the resurrection? Like, does Heavenly Father, like, does Christ come and hand me a, like, perfectly formed baby? Do I, like, be pregnant again? Do I just, like does she come as, like, an adult who's already resurrected? And like, I don't know what that's gonna look like. We're told we get to raise our children, but I don't know what that means. Anyway, but and I didn't necessarily get answers on those particular things in conference this time around, but what I loved was just this message of hope and, how it just related to Christ, because I remember at that time in my life, I don't know that I had ever felt like true, deep, real, like personal, gratitude for the Savior and for what his, um sacrifice really means for me, like, in the long run. I think that until up to that point in my life, I had lived a pretty Molly Mormon life, I hadn't I mean, I'd made mistakes, but they were kind of I don't know, like, I'd never been, like, weighed down by things,
I think the biggest mistake you made was that time you took the car and you,
Oh my
like,
gosh.
scraped the
I
side of it. I
Yeah,
remember
I
that.
did take a car once, that's true, and I ran it into the fence, that was bad.
But,
But yeah,
like,
like
other than that, like, yeah, pretty normal life, you know?
yeah, pretty normal life, pretty average life. Anyway, so and I don't like remember how we went through that time in our family that we were it was like every time we got together as a family is for a funeral. Do you remember this? And
Yeah,
it
I
was like
remember
for
that. Yeah,
5 years.
yeah, it was like, yeah, it was tough. It was like Javi, my dad, who was grandma,
Yeah,
and
grandpa, my
then
baby.
grandpa, your baby, yeah,
Mhm.
and then, like, Angelo,
Yeah, Angelo.
um, was he the last one?
Mhm.
I think so, yeah, it was tough, man, that was tough.
Yeah, we just, like, went through this time where it just seemed like every time we got together as a family, it was f to mourn another passing of our loved ones, and anyway, so yeah, I just in at that time in my life was when I really it hit me, like, I was so grateful that Jesus resurrected, and I had never been so grateful for that before, and, you know, just yeah, hearing these messages in conference today just reminded me of that time in my life and how I would have loved to hear messages like this at that time, and I know so many families who have lost children, who have had, their babies die in utero or have had miscarriages or stillbirths, just whatever. And I just think that these reminders from other individuals of faith that the Lord's got it all worked out. I don't know how he has it worked out. I don't know what it will all look like. I just know that he knows. And that's enough for me. And knowing that that's enough for someone else, where it's like we don't have all the answers, but that's enough for them. It can be enough for me. Like we're doing exactly what we're asked to do, and that's put faith in Christ, and that gives me a lot of peace and just a feeling of camaraderie too, like this feeling of unity with others who have endured pain. Like we've all suffered in one way or another in this life, and knowing that Christ went through what he did again so that he could heal us, so that he can just be like that balm, like that salve that helps us to be better until it makes sense. I think is a really sacred space to be able to walk in at times.
For sure. Okay, Fonz is in the chat.
Like Uncle Fonz?
Yeah, say hello.
What up, Uncle Fonz? That's so cool.
So Fonz says, "So God wanted them all to die." Okay, that's a good question. Oh my gosh, okay.
How can he
Well,
ask us this when, like, it was my baby and your father and his brothers
well,
and
I
his
have one.
parents? What in the
I have an
world?
even crazy. So that's the Rodriguez side of the family, right? Looking at my Marquez side of the family, um, my uncle Raul, my uncle Luis, he had a 17-year-old boy, Raul, who had cancer and he passed away last year.
Hmm,
I think it was about last year, maybe a year and a half ago. And I remember, the first presidency heard about it and they had prayed for
hmm.
him, and he I feel like that was a touching kind of like service for them to do. But I remember at the time I was taking philosophy at BYU, we were talking about the problem of evil. Kind of like why do bad things happen if God exists? I'm not talking about just like typical bad things, but like suffering, death, sickness,
Right.
earthquakes, and all these things. And yeah, I mean, it is so hard.
Is he
Um,
saying something more?
yeah.
Alright.
Wait, hold on. Sorry, I'm losing my train of thought because I'm reading a comment. I'll read this comment in a minute.
Okay.
Um, but one of the things that I was reading about is like, evil we live in a world where evil is allowed to exist, right? And God obviously wanted evil to exist, but what's the purpose of the evil in the world? There's not a definitive answer, right? But and of course you can't like logic your way out of the suffering. Like it's insensitive.
Yeah,
Like
I agree.
I couldn't go up to you when all these things happening and be like, Megan, there's logical proof about that. It doesn't
Right.
work, and it's not really what we're supposed to do. But I think really one of the things that we're called to do is mourn with those who mourn, and it's an opportunity at the very least to be there for each other and to serve one another. And
Mhm.
I think God kind of like he crafts us and he molds us and he refines our character as we serve others in those tough times.
Yeah.
So,
All right, well,
you know,
I wanna dial back my reaction to Uncle Fonz, because let's assume, because we love Uncle Fonz, that this is, like, a legit question, like, did God want them all to die? And the thing that I've come to, like, for my situation personally, and this might not apply or track for everyone, and that's totally fine, but for me, it's just really is having the I just let me think. I'm trying to say this with thinking of Uncle Fonz, like, if he was standing and sitting right in front of me. First, I would give him a hug because I love my Uncle Fonz. But I think what I would say next is, I know that when my baby died, I was angry at God for a long time. I did not want to feel God's love because it was too painful. It was too painful to feel that, like, he had betrayed me, by allowing my baby to die, and it was painful to think of the ways that he could have saved her, and, all of those things were very painful for me, and I didn't want to do anything spiritual. I didn't want to experience any sort of tenderness from the Lord because I was angry at him, and that's my honest experience with that. And so what I came around to finally is, first, looking back, I regretted that I had spent so much time being angry, and I'm not suggesting that Uncle Fonz is angry. I was angry. I'm speaking about myself. Um, I regretted not letting him love me again sooner, because once I finally let him into my life again, let him into my heart, it was so sweet and it was so good, and I just realized he really has got it all under control. He knows what he's doing. He knows that this is something that caused me pain, and I just kept thinking about how if God was willing to send his son to die for all the others, then he knows what I'm going through. He knows what that feels like, and, if I were asked to choose one of my children to die for the others, I would not be able to make that decision. But Heavenly Father did make that decision. And knowing that he did that for me and that Christ agreed to do that for all of us, to come and die and to resurrect for me, for my baby, for those who I love who have passed away, that makes him a good God for me, and one that I want to trust and one that I want to worship, because I know that he loved me that much. He loved my baby that much. So it's not so much of a question of did he want them to die or not. I feel like death is one of those things that here on earth we put such a huge weight on because it hurts. It hurts. That separation is painful. That separation is proof of our love for the person who passed. But I think that from God's perspective, um, it's not the same. I don't think it's the same. I think that I can't say what it is because I don't have God's perspective, but I know that in his goodness, he wouldn't purposefully want us to suffer. He wouldn't purposefully want
mhm,
us to have these pains. I think that that's why Christ, again, that's why he came, was he was the one that's like, I'm going to experience these pains so that when you do, because we live in this fallen world, we live in a world with death and illness and evil and, horrific things, that he would truly know how to help us. So I don't know if that makes sense. That's where I came to. And it does give me a lot of hope, because if I believe or were to choose to believe in a God that is okay with suffering, then that would completely change my perspective on who God is. But because he doesn't
mhm.
want us to suffer, he had a whole plan to,
Well,
like, put in
see,
place.
no, that's no, I love what you're saying, and I think that's actually really inspiring to a lot of people. And to that, I would add, kind of something I said earlier. I was talking to one of my BYU professors. We were thinking about writing an article about fasting, right, and some of the benefits of fasting. And there are certain health benefits of fasting, but one of the I was trying to think about it more psychologically, right? Like, what's a psychological benefit of fasting? And
Mm,
so this is really cool. So, um, fasting has a etymology, like a history, and fasting, um, first of all, fast is like, you have to think about it as like holding fast to something.
Mhm.
So, like, we always talk about holding fast with iron rod. The
Right.
word fasting, what that meant originally was something like you were so you were your mind was fasted upon something that you forget to eat. And
Mm.
and like, and especially when you're a kid, this happens a lot. Like, you have so much fun, you forget to eat, and then your grandma's like, "Did you eat?" And you're like, "No," and she's like, "Wait, how do you have to eat?" Um, but but um, but it's really like being engaged in something and voluntarily, your mind is fasted upon something else that you forget to eat, right? And so when I think about like really important spiritual experiences and like connection with God, like your mind is fasted upon that. And
Mhm.
you could, sometimes, like, you forget about the pain of not having eaten yet, you know?
Mhm.
And so I think about that aspect of fasting where, like, you're trying to get into a state where you're focused on the spiritual thing, that you forget about what your body, like, you forget about, like, that your body's in pain, and you forget about the worldly pains. And I
Sure.
think that's really like the history of the word fasting. I think really, like, is a beautiful in that, like, when you're engaging in service and when you're engaging in trying to help others and doing a good cause, like, the people who do it well, they do it at the expense of their own needs, and they're there for people, even if they themselves have needs. And so your mind is faceted upon that. I think
Mm.
that's a really good metaphor. Like, if you're truly like seeking to do good, like, your mind is faceted upon that. And but then the second angle that I think about is, first of all, in America, you don't really experience hunger, like, and
It's
I've
so
noticed,
true.
I wake up and I'm not hungry in the morning because I've eaten so much the day before, and my body is like producing the energy I need. And and if you're on BYU campus, you can always find free food. And in America, like,
Mhm.
I'm not trying to discount people's suffering, but what I will say is fasting gives you an opportunity to enter into that state of hunger, and you get to sympathize with people, empathize, and be in the shoes of people who are suffering and who are experiencing hunger, and you get to sort of like have a taste of what that's like. And then when you're experiencing that, then the giving a fast offering is like truly the most important thing. It's like there are
Mm.
people who are hungry, and that, like, they don't have, I'm only getting a taste of what that hunger must be like, but I am experiencing this, and that's enough for me to
Mhm.
motivate me to say, hey, look, I'm going to pay a fast offering, so people don't have to feel that anymore, and I get to sort of, in a sense, I'm mourning with them by perspectively, entering into, like, being in their shoes. And that's actually what it means to understand. It means to stand within. I'm standing
Mm.
within their circumstance. So yeah, there's no easy answer to, like, suffering and death and evil. But I think what is immediately accessible is to put yourself into people's shoes who are suffering, and then to act and to comfort them. And I
Mhm.
think I think Christ's whole earthly ministry and his mission was to truly, right, is to I mean, it's to be at one with us, to understand what we understood, and then to succor us. And he
Mhm.
can, because he experienced it all. So I
Yeah.
I
Well, I
think
was go ahead,
oh,
sorry.
sorry, go ahead. No, I'm just rambling now.
No, I was just thinking, how you were saying that fasting is, to fast, like, hold fast to something. I really like that. I hadn't thought of it like that before, um, because I would always think of it of refraining from something, but you're saying that it's actually to hold on to something all the more. And so when I think of it in that perspective, then I think that there could be the argument made that to come unto Christ and to follow him is to fast from the things of the world. It's to instead, we're refraining from that, but what we're holding fast to is Jesus Christ. And I think that when we are in our moments of suffering and our moments of pain, whether it's pain that we brought on ourselves or pain of just, life, that if we are holding fast to Christ, then we are not always granted answers to the reasons that things are happening, but we are granted peace. And that's why he offers us his peace. And that's why he explicitly explains that it is peace that is not as the world giveth. And that kind of peace can't be replicated or duplicated by anything in the world because it's his peace. It's a peace that surpasses what we know from the worldly things that we might turn to for comfort. And so I think I love that. I really like that imagery. I'm going to teach it to my kids like that from now on, that fasting is holding tight to something that is of more importance. So, yeah,
Mhm.
I think that's good.
Cool, I love it. Well, it's been about an hour, so we got to wrap up. But
Okay.
yeah, no, thank you for sharing all your thoughts and all your, all your notes about General Conference. I think it was a great conference, and I'm excited to see what happens next. I feel like, the I think it would be too drastic for President Oaks to like make all these crazy announcements. The first time he's in, the first conference he's president. But I think in the future we're going to see some big changes. So we'll
Mhm.
probably do this again in 6 months.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks everyone, and hold on, Jaden is in the chat. Our cousin Jaden.
Hey, look at this. It's just
Jaden
a little family
says,
reunion here.
I added Jaden actually, and I said, hey bro, like just keep this on the low down, because like like this group is wild, especially on lobsters. He says focus, fasten on more on Jesus Christ equals joy, which can help us through any trial and suffering. Smiley face. Love it.
Mm,
Thank
yep.
you. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Thanks for everyone in the chat. We'll do this again. If there's any topics you guys want to hear about, put them in the comments. Send me a DM. If you want to be on the live stream, reach out to me. We'll work something out. And then again, Megan, tell us where people can find you, and then we'll end.
Okay, yeah, so you can find me on YouTube on my channel, Let Your Heart Be Glad, and, I also have Facebook and Instagram that I post on here and there, but I do my long form videos, I try to do them weekly where we dive into a general conference message, and sometimes I'll add in little extras here and there of different episodes that cover maybe something that's happening in church or just whatever, some new announcement or update. But typically, we're just focusing on the general conference messages and all the footnotes and everything. And it's great. It's a really awesome experience for me to do this. And I just love that there are so many who want to hear and study these messages with me. So thank you guys.
Cool. Yeah. For more general conference stuff, check out Megan's channel. If you liked this stuff, share it with your friends and family. Like, comment, spam everyone. Corey Bell said never again. I don't know what that means. All right. I'll see you guys. Megan, stay on the line, and then we'll chat a bit.
All right.